Kyle, how long do you think your presentation is?
Maybe 5, 7.
I don't know. Seems a little hot still.
Ready?
Yeah, we're on.
All right, good evening.
Yep.
Welcome to the October 8th Newmarket Planning Board meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome all. We're going to start with public comments. Is there any public comments on anything that's not on the agenda? All right, hearing none, I will close the public comment session at 7:02. Next on the agenda is review and approval of the site walk minutes of August 20th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, comments, corrections?
You said August 20th?
August 20th.
It says August 19th.
Yes,
Yeah, it
it's
says that on the agenda.
the minutes say 20.
Double
Yep.
checking.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
All right, there's no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. I'm going to abstain. Motion passes. Next is review and approval of the minutes of September 10th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes unanimously.
Did you appoint somebody for Bill to do so?
No, I don't.
Just read.
And for Jane. So before we
Or Jane.
before we start, both Bill Doucette and Jane Ford aren't here, so Ted and Michael, you guys will fill in for them tonight. first on the agenda is consideration of appointing for alternate Thomas Howard. I don't see Thomas here.
No.
So I guess I will try to reach out to him.
Okay, he
He was out last time
he had surgery
for
or
medical
something,
reasons,
yeah.
right. And then next is Kyle Pimentel. Close, there we go. From SRPC. Welcome, Kyle. You're going to update us on the water resource chapter?
I am. So good evening, everyone. My name is Kyle Pimentel. I'm the Principal Regional Planner at Stratford Regional Planning Commission. And I'm just going to take 5-10 minutes or so to give you guys an update on a project that we're going to be working on with the town to update their water resource chapter. So just to give you guys a little bit of a background information, back last year around November, the Planning Commission applied for a grant through DES's Source Water Protection Program. And in our proposal, what we were asking to do was 3 different things. One was to develop some regional drinking water maps, to review and update all of the potential contamination sites within our region, and also to implement 2 local drinking water projects. So we left it very open-ended. We didn't have any projects in mind, but we wanted to do 2, or at least up to 2, local drinking water projects. So we were selected for funding. We found out later that year, but it had to go through governing council, and that takes some time. So in April of this past year, we had a contract with the state. We received $20,000 as part of this project. As sort of a sidestep, myself and my executive director sat down with the town planner and the town administrator back in July to talk about a number of different projects that the town was considering. And we brought this to the town's attention that we did have some funding and to focus in on that drinking water protection. So in that discussion, we talked about the 2009 master plan chapter, and that if the town was interested, we could use this pot of funding to update that chapter. So we submitted a proposal to the state saying that this was going to be our local project. We're going to use all the funding for this. A master plan chapter it's time consuming, especially a chapter like this. I think your chapter now in front of you is probably close to 80 to 100 pages. So it's a comprehensive chapter. So we decided, instead of trying to break this up into 2 different projects, we decided that we were just going to do this one. So we're going to put the whole, the funding that we have available, instead of doing 2 projects, we're just going to do the one in Newmarket. So again, this chapter was last updated in 2009. There have been some development changes. Different patterns have emerged, different climate conditions. That's become more of a focus more recently, larger flood and storm events, things like drought. And also the one that's probably the most recent is the groundwater impacts from sea level rise. There may have been some discussions about Moody Point and the groundwater study that we did 2 years ago, as well as a higher demand on the municipal water system and local aquifers. So the intent for this particular chapter update is going to provide guidance not only for the planning board, but also town council and other municipal boards and commissions on guidance for policies, regulations, and actions for Newmarket's existing drinking water and thinking about long-term for the future. The one larger emphasis that we want to include, and the state is making this a large priority for all municipalities, is to think about how communities can effectively deal with emerging contaminants. And the large ones are the PFOAs and PFAS and those that have been in the news lately, and new legislation is passed at the state level. There's going to be a stronger focus on what Newmarket can do to prepare for that and how to best deal with those types of contaminants for the future. Our scope of work is relatively simple. To develop the draft, we're holding our kickoff meeting today with the planning board to fill you in on what's to come. We're going to do some data collection, chapter writing, updating the existing chapter. Again, there's a lot there that we can probably carry forward. Some things need to be updated, but we don't want to lose what was done back in 2009 because it is a really comprehensive chapter. We'll come back and present a draft to the planning board, incorporate that feedback. We also have an opportunity to do some sort of outreach. It doesn't necessarily have to be a public workshop. It could be an online survey. It could be a couple of different things. We just wanted to get some feedback on the recommendations that were going to come out of the chapter from the public. So that's up to this kind of the subcommittee to decide on what we want to do there. But it is always a good idea to invite feedback from the public, especially for something like this when you're talking about something like drinking water and water resources. So to take that feedback, incorporate it back into the chapter, and then the adoption process, present that back to you guys, and then schedule a time for a public hearing. Our immediate next steps is to just approve our memorandum of understanding with the town. We have $8,000 for federal funds, and as part of that, the 25% of that is going to be a match from the town. Organizing the subcommittee, and we can talk about that in a little bit. If there's interest there, how this board feels handling that. Is there other members from other boards that you'd like to see on that, either the Conservation Commission or other municipal staff? That's up to this board to kind of talk about that. The roles for that subcommittee are going to be to review new data that the Planning Commission provides, fine-tune some of the recommendations, and also assist with that public workshop outreach activity, whatever that turns out to be. And then holding that first meeting with the subcommittee is the last piece of the immediate next steps. So looking at the chapter framework, are there things that we need to be thinking about in terms of data needs? Are there recent studies that the city has done that we should be thinking about, or big, large topic issues that were not addressed in 2009 that we need to think about now? So having that local perspective is going to be really helpful from the Planning Commission. We've got a good sense of some of the regional issues, but we really need to know, local studies, anything that's been done. Those are sort of new emerging threats that you want to have in this chapter. There's also probably been a lot that's happened since 2009 that we need to make sure that we get into this chapter. This is just kind of a real rough idea of what the path forward might be or might look like. Our grant, it's going to be a fairly quick process. Our grant ends May 30th of next year, so that doesn't necessarily mean that the plan needs to be adopted at that point, but we want to be at the final stages, at least having a final draft in front of the board, but we don't necessarily have to have it signed and stamped and approved by this board, but we want to be fairly far along. So, task one in developing that chapter update between now and sometime at the end of February, we should, have a draft ready for this board, meeting with the subcommittee periodically in between there. It may not need to be monthly. It may need to be every other month. It's going to kind of depend on what needs to be updated and how much work the subcommittee needs to really have. So that can kind of be determined. The outreach event, the timing's not great in March, but it is what it is. Maybe March might be able to push it out into April. And then thinking about getting that final document to you guys in that April-May timeframe. And that gives us a little bit of leeway. If we finish before that, great. If not, we'll just carry that forward. But our grant ends May 30th of next year. And that's it. So just a really quick update. If we want to I can answer any questions and then have a discussion about the subcommittee.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any members have any questions for Kyle?
What would you look to have the public workshop add to the process?
So it can be a couple of different ways that we could do that. One could be just focusing in on the recommendations piece of it, to have the public comment on that, or have before we get to the final recommendations, have them provide the town with what they like to see. My guess is that they're probably not going to look through the 80 or 90 page document itself. There's a lot of information there. We could certainly go that route, but what I have recommended to other communities is I think probably one of the most important pieces is the recommendations. are we missing something? Is it something that if it could be a land use change that may or may not be supported? So I think those are probably the most beneficial pieces of information from the public is on the recommendations.
Go ahead, Bill.
So it might make sense to look at the last subcommittee makeup. I think Bill was on it, our cherry. And then I would think that Diane might weigh in on that, just because there's so much going on right now, the different water projects in town.
Right, and there's
they
some,
probably
there
do
could
a
be a
lot of that.
stormwater piece to that too, so.
So a lot of that public input would really be at the subcommittee level.
Right.
If we go back and see who was active on the last subcommittee.
When we worked on the stormwater regulations, the chairman of the Conservation Commission participated, and he might be interested in that as well. Or there might be other new members. Sarah, I'm looking at you because you're our representative on the Conservation Commission, so maybe you could bring back the message to them that if the board decides we want to go in this fashion, that we're looking for some recruits for
Sure.
that committee.
Sure, I'll mention it on Thursday.
Right, oh, thank you. Perfect
And
timing.
If
Yeah.
anybody else thinks they may want to be on the subcommittee, just email Diane, if you would.
We'll probably be thinking sometime in early November-ish is that first meeting to look through the chapter skeleton and make sure that framework is solid and get some of that feedback that I was talking about before about studies and things that we need to be thinking about. So probably early November. So there's a few weeks to think about it, but the sooner the better that we can get that group together to hold our first meeting.
Great.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and then
Anyone else?
Diane, you'll have the list of the last committee, right? The 2009?
The one that we did,
Or it'll
it's
be
been a
in the
while, but
chapter?
I'm sure we'll be able to find
I think
something.
the acknowledgements page on the chapter
Would
has
have
a
that.
list of who participated.
It seems to me that the town, let's see,
It's
the
prob-
town engineer was involved maybe in that chapter, but I'll go back and do some research on
Meaning
that.
Sean?
No, it was
Oh.
somebody from, it
Underwood?
was actually
Oh.
Tobin Farwell.
Oh, yes, that's who it
Or
was.
maybe I'm getting it confused with
No, I
the
don't think you are.
Stormwater Committee. I know that Eric Bodeman served on that.
On the stormwater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes.
Well,
Right,
let me do some
I'm pretty sure it's
research.
Bill Archieri, someone
Okay.
from the Conservation Commission, and then probably
Sean
three planning board members, and Sean definitely should be on that.
Okay.
Just because there's so many projects.
Sure. Any other planning board members that might want to volunteer?
I will.
Okay,
Alrighty.
good.
There's no other questions
That's great.
for Kyle. We'll let him go. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Kyle.
While he's doing that, I'll read this. Next on the agenda is 77 Hersey Lane, LLC, Walter Cheney, Chimberg Builders, continuation of a public hearing for an application for special use review for an open space, single-family subdivision on a 12-acre lot. The lot is located at Hersey Lane, tax map R4, lot 3, R2 zone. My understanding is that the applicant has requested a continuation.
That is
Continuance.
correct.
So when's our next meeting?
November, what date is that? 12th?
12th? Is there a motion to continue?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Do I have my-
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion?
But just
Hearing-
discussion, this is really just for the special use permit, right? Not the application.
It is, but we have a review letter.
Yeah.
Hang on for a minute. And there are a few technical questions that came up, and the applicant is looking for some feedback from the Technical Review Committee on the waiver for the buffer, open space, and buffer requirements. And we'd like to get the committee, the subcommittee, which I think was made up of you, Val, and Bill Doucette, like to get that group together maybe in the next 2 weeks and schedule that so that they'll be ready for the November 12th meeting.
Well, the November 12th is still just the special use permit, not the
That's
actual
right.
application.
That's right, but
Okay.
there's still some issues that came up in the review of the application, and I'll get that review letter out to
Okay.
the committee members.
Okay. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. I'm just gonna take the next one out of order, just in case there's anybody here for that. Skyfall LLC, Eric Potts, continuation of a public hearing for an application for site plan regarding a 32 by 12 foot addition of one garage bay to the right side of the current building. The lot is located at 82 Exeter Road, tax map U4, lot 2-2 in the B1 zone, and this applicant has requested a continuance also.
So moved to November 12th.
Is there a
Yes.
second?
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is Mazaron Group LLC, continuation of a public hearing for an application for major site plan review regarding two additions to an existing building, one 12,610 square feet and one 11,000 square feet with new parking and access drives. The lot is located at 5 Forbes Road, tax map R3, lot 9-3 in the B2 zone. So we have a recommendation from the planner, Ms. Hardy, but I would like to have the applicant update us on the recent revisions made to the plan, if you would, please.
Sure. For the record, my name is Jonathan Rink from Jones Beach Engineers in Stratham, New Hampshire, and with us is Justin Gray, the owner of Promocentric Mazaron Group, and Paige Libby, in case we have any specific engineering drainage questions from our office. The project involves, it's 5 Forbes Road, as you know, the last lot on the left, down at the end of Forbes Road in the industrial park off Route 108. And the existing building is in this location, and it's proposed to add a building addition A on the left-hand side, the west side, and building addition B on the right-hand side. We did meet with the TRC committee and made some changes in accordance with the comments from Underwood Engineers and others at that meeting, which resulted in changing a little bit here the parking layout, moving the hydrant out front. We talked about the sprinkler system or potential for a sprinkler system, and that's one of the conditions of the approval, is that we resolve the issues with the fire department relative to code compliance for the fire protection at the building once these additions would go forward. We do have a fire engineer who's going to be looking at that, and we haven't got the results back from him yet on the building type and material and that kind of thing. We also have a recent condition that was mentioned about doing a trip generation for the building additions, which we'll submit to the Department of Transportation so that they can take a look at that. Make sure there's no additional improvements to the driveway, which the Conway Group folks have just recently done. And then we made a couple of changes with some landscape and a little bit with the drainage as we went through. And the final thing is the transformer on the left-hand side of the building. We're still working with Eversource to confirm that the existing whether the existing transformer is big enough to satisfy the electrical needs for the two additions. If not, we'll have to swap out the transformer and deal with the cover, sufficient cover over the electric lines that feed that transformer from a utility pole over there. So basically that's it. We think we're in pretty good shape. We were here on August 13th to open the public hearing for this and discuss issues, and we're happy to answer any questions. Do you have anything you'd like to add now? No, I don't. Okay. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the application.
Great, thank you. Any board members have any questions? No? Okay, with that, is there anybody in the public who has any public comments here to speak about this? No? Okay. Ms. Hardy, do you want to walk us through your...
Want to deal with the waivers first?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We do have some waivers. I do have a waiver request letter that's in your package, which I can read. I think it's dated September 17th. Would
Yes,
you like
ahead.
me to go
Yes,
through
please.
those?
Yes,
Pardon me?
please. Yes, please. Go ahead through
Okay.
those.
So the first one is Appendix B, Site Plan, Section 3.02A1, the number of parking spaces. The current use of the property is about 85% warehouse and 15% office space, with many of the existing parking spaces not being used. The applicant anticipates that the tenants in both building additions will be similar businesses with approximately 85% warehouse space. The total anticipated employee count for the entire building, including existing and building additions, is 70 employees, and we're providing 102 spaces. This was discussed with the planning board at our design review hearing on May 14th of this year, at which time the planning board suggested, well, take a look at that and see what you really need, because we'd like to have as little impervious on the site as possible. Do you want to do each waiver at once?
Yes,
or
I'd like to do
all
each
at
one
once? Okay.
individually.
So we do have a parking calculation here, note number 3 on the site plan sheet C2, that talks about what's there today and what's proposed in the additions.
I'll make a motion, we, approve the waiver request for section 3.02A1 regarding number of spaces, based on the information provided by the applicant in letter dated September 17th, 2019.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of supporting the waiver, approving the waiver, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next one, please.
Waiver number 2 is Appendix B, Site Plan, Section 3.02, subparagraph C, parking location. The regulations require parking spaces to meet the property setbacks, but due to the location of the existing building, there is insufficient room to place the proposed double-loaded parking aisle to the left of the building, and this parking encroaches slightly into the side and front setbacks. A waiver is respectfully requested. When we had first come in, we had a little bit wider parking here, but the parking aisle does impose on that side yard setback. We have a small portion here in the front at the very extreme easterly edge of the site that has a space and a half that's in the front yard setback.
And on the left side, what is the buffer there?
Well, the property setback is, well, the landscape buffer is 15 feet.
Okay.
And we have the 25-foot aisle. When we were here in the conceptual hearing, we tried to reduce the size of the spaces here, and we had maybe a 16-foot aisle and parking on both sides. And we've since eliminated the left-hand part of that aisle. So there's a 15-foot landscape buffer to an adjacent lot here in the industrial park.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion to grant the waiver request from section 3.02C regarding parking location based on the information provided by the applicant and noted in the plans.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second direction. Any discussion, comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor of granting the waiver, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, motion passes unanimously.
Waiver number 3 is Appendix B, Site Plan, Section 4.08, Plan Scale. The regulations require plans to be prepared at 1 inch equals 20-foot scale to show the entire property on one sheet. In order to minimize confusion and provide ease of review, the plans prepared at 1 inch equals 30-foot scale, and we request that waiver.
Make a motion that we grant the waiver request from section 4.02 plan scale based on the information provided by the applicant on the September 17th, 2019 memo.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jamie. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Say nay. The ayes have it, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Ring. Now can we go?
There's one more waiver. On the back side, it's mine's a two-sided letter. I don't know if you got the second page.
I don't have it.
But
We do.
Yeah.
But the final
last
waiver is
page.
Appendix B, Site Plan, Section 3.02, B1A2, which is handicap parking stall length. Because we're retrofitting an existing handicap space and restriping them, these lengths are only 18 feet long and not the entire length, so we request that waiver as well. It's because we're retrofitting the existing site and we don't have enough room to change that around.
What's the reduction from?
20 feet?
20.
From 20 feet to 18. The aisle, again, is still 25 feet.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion that we grant the waiver request from section 3.02B1A2 regarding handicap parking stall length from 20 feet wide to 18 feet wide.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now, Diane, would you want to walk us through, you have a recommendation for approval, do you want to walk us through
I
that?
do. I did want to make a couple of corrections or additions to my recommendations. In going through the file initially, I didn't see the plan elevation that is required under the site plan regulations. And upon going through and reorganizing everything today, I noticed that there was a plan that was tucked in behind another plan, and we did get a copy of this at the August 13th meeting. And I didn't know if we didn't discuss it at that meeting, but I'll just pass this around just so that
I do have some
you
copies.
have some copies. Fantastic.
I have 6, which might actually be enough.
I have my own.
This is not in the plan set, it was a separate attachment. A separate attachment from the architectural folks.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't I go ahead and I'll go through and I will add a couple of things as we go along. It is the staff recommendation. I thought Mr. Ring did an excellent job in bringing us up to date, and I concur with everything that he stated, and it's outlined in my memo that you have dated October 5th. So rather than going back through and reiterating that, I'll jump right to the recommendations, if that's okay with the board.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so the staff recommendation is that the planning board this evening conditionally approve the major site plan application involving 2 new additions and associated parking, drainage, and landscaping improvements. And several of the conditions that are being recommended are standard recommendations. I'll quickly run through them. A, that the applicant enter into a developer's agreement with the town that states the findings of fact and any special site plan conditions and requirements on the issuance of building permits and certificates of occupancy and scheduling and the timing of improvements. B is that the applicant make an advance payment to the town to allow for the town's engineering consultant to provide construction oversight to assure that the work is being done in accordance with the town's regulations and in accordance with the approved plan. The third condition is that the applicant, and it's just for the water connection because they have their own sewer septic plan that's being proposed, and that the impact fees be assessed in accordance with our schedule, and it will be based on projected flow data that's provided by the applicant's engineer and approved by our engineer. The fourth condition would be that all the permits related to the project have been secured. And we did note that there had been some coordination with the Department of Transportation. They've asked for some traffic data, and there's a question on whether or not there is a highway access permit required or not, but we hope that with the submission of that information to DOT, we'll get a handle on that. It would be that highway access permit. And the second would be the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services septic system approval on the new system that's being planned. And that was one of the changes that I wanted to suggest that we make to the recommendations. Okay, item E, that there be a note placed on the plan that any mechanical equipment, including electrical, plumbing, heat, ventilation, air conditioning, will not be readily available or viewed from the public right-of-way, and if so, shall be screened appropriately to the maximum extent, and that is based on one of our town's site plan regulation requirements. The next one is special conditions F. The site plan drawing C2 needs to be signed and dated and certified by the licensed land surveyor prior to plan signing. 2, as Mr. Ring had indicated, the fire department is requiring that the existing building as well as the 2 proposed additions will be provided with a fire suppression system, and that shall be installed in accordance with his requirements, and needs to happen, there needs to be a design for that prior to the issuance of the building permit. Third special condition is that the applicant comply with the recommendations of Underwood Engineers, and I think we sent out a copy of their final sign-off letter last week to everyone. I hope you all received that. But basically, it's to have some follow-through up on the electrical service issue that came up and get some feedback from the fire protection engineer on the sizing of the main line that will service the fire suppression systems for the project. 4, I think we can take that off the list because we do have an elevation view, and as part of the approval tonight, if the planning board chooses to approve the plan, that would be one of the conditions that would be similar to what is presented here, and as depicted by the architect. The 5th condition is that, and Mr. Ring has already alluded to this, that the applicant coordinate with the Division 6 and provide site data, traffic count data, to determine if the traffic impacts associated with this project warrants the issuance of a highway access permit, and if so, if there are any modifications that are recommended resulting from that process, that there'd be an evaluation as to whether the existing improvements that have already been made on site or recently have been made by the Conway Group, whether that will be sufficient to accommodate any increased traffic, and if not, then there may be some additional engineering or off-site improvements that may be required. And I just wanted to state that as sort of if, or, and what. It all depends on the position of the Department of Transportation and how they view the plans. And if there are going to be off-site improvements, it would be in accordance with the regulations that we have in effect regarding performance guarantees, and it would have to be completed before any certificates of occupancy are issued. I know that's a long-winded condition, but we noted this sort of at the 11th hour, and I wanted to make sure that there was language in here to make sure that that process goes forward. And I did talk to the applicant, and they're more than willing to work with us on that and collaborate. The
Yes.
highway access permit would actually be filed by the town of Newmarket because Forbes Road is a town road. I just wanted to let you be aware of that. Okay? The next one is that the applicant provide information to the PTAP database, and this is one of the requirements that it has been imposed upon us through the EPA as part of our administrative order. We need to track the impervious surfaces that are being added and establish what kind of nitrogen loading would be a result of that, and that there's adequate provisions being made as part of our review process to mitigate any of those impacts. And last but not least is the whole issue of vesting. You recall from previous applications, part of the planning board's role is to establish when vesting will occur, and this is required by our state law. And basically what vesting does, it protects the applicant and developer from any subsequent changes in the town zoning, subdivision, and site plan review regulations that would go into effect if the project is delayed for some reason. And I have just put in some language here, and this is for discussion by the board, that the first benchmark, if you will, is that active and substantial development has to occur within 24 months of the approval. And I'm suggesting that that be defined as site grading, installation of the utilities, and the septic system and foundation work. And that permanent vesting, which protects the applicant for a period longer than 5 years, would occur upon substantial completion of the building and the site improvements as shown on what will hopefully become the approved plan. So that's the staff recommendation, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that the board has at this time.
Let me start by asking the applicant, do you take exception to any of these conditions?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only one that we have, I wouldn't say an issue with, but item F2 about the fire suppression system. First of all, this is for a site plan for additions. So it's my understanding if the economy fell apart tomorrow, God forbid, and this didn't move forward, I believe there's no requirement to sprinkle the existing building. If the project does move forward and we construct the additions, then we'll make sure that our fire protection engineer and contractors work with the fire chief to secure sign-off from the fire chief. We have a note here that says sprinkler systems, if involved, are required to be signed off by the fire chief prior to construction and all that kind of stuff. So we'll make sure that our fire engineer works with the fire chief to make sure that the plan is compliant with the codes that are applicable to
That
the
makes
project.
sense.
And
That
isn't
makes
that isn't that more of a building permit issue than a planning board site plan issue?
I think it is.
You can't get the building permit unless the fire department signs off on the
Right.
permit.
It was my
That's
understanding
true.
from the correspondence from the the fire
Yeah.
chief, is he wanted to see the entire building, the existing building, be sprinkled as well, to bring it into compliance with life safety code
But that will be
requirements.
his decision
That's
at
right.
the building permit level, really not.
So
Well-
is that suggesting we
Site plan.
eliminate that altogether, that condition?
I just don't think the planning board's involved with the building
No.
permit end
No, I
of it.
agree.
But I think that was.
I think putting them on notice is important.
I do think it needs to happen prior to building permit, so if you wanted to say prior to building
Okay.
permit, this
That's-
gets
and that's what I think
resolved,
the
that's
intent was. I
fine.
think I mentioned that as
It-
I went through. I think there was a surprise on the part of the fire chief to learn that the existing building didn't have a sprinkler system. And of course, these systems
Right.
are required to protect public safety and obviously the investment that the applicant is making in the property.
Yeah,
So-
and this building goes back to 1986 or someplace
Right.
like that, so it's
So-
been there a long
So
time.
that was what my intent was, that this would be addressed prior to the issuance of any building permits on the property. But that came up as a big discussion because there was a question on whether or not the water service that was being proposed was adequate to handle it and so forth.
Which would fall under the site plan.
Right.
But not the actual.
Yeah, we actually do show two water services right now, one on the left and the hydrant and the water service on the right. So working with our fire engineer and the fire chief, we'll resolve that before we submit the final plan for signing by the board. At least the fire service, the water service.
Okay, so we modify that to say prior to building permit. Any other comments?
No, I think the rest are pretty self-explanatory. Thank you.
You're fine with the vesting language?
Okay, anybody else in the?
I have one question though.
Come on, excuse me, come up here.
Um,
Please tell the audience who you are and.
My name's Justin Gray. I'm the member of Massaran Group LLC in Promo-Centric. The only question I really had was on active and substantial development of building as being site grading, installation of utility septic. Is it all of the above?
Yes,
Okay.
that's my intent.
And
It's
then,
up to the board to decide though.
so the 2 years from approval, that would potentially be this evening? Is when the clock,
Final approval.
final approval?
So when the plans are signed and all the conditions are met.
Okay.
And they're ready to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds.
Okay, perfect.
So if
That's
it takes
when-
you 6 months to work through the conditions.
Yeah.
Once we sign the plans, that's when
24
2
months
years
from
Right.
that.
starts.
Okay.
And that's established in the state law.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all I have. I thank the board. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank
great.
All right, if nobody has any other comments in the public, I'm gonna close the public hearing. And ask the pleasure of the board. Is anybody interested in making a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the application for a major site plan for the construction of 2 additions to an existing building with new parking and access drives located at 5 Forbes Road, tax map R3, lot 9-3 in the B2 zone, subject to the town planner's recommended conditions of approval as amended tonight in the October 5th, 2019 memo to the planning board as amended by discussion by the board tonight.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for your time.
Just give them a minute or so to get out of the way. Thank you, have a good night.
Good night, Justin.
All right, next on the agenda is CRC Future Court, public hearing for an application for design review for a 28-unit, single-family residential development. The lot is located at Hersey Lane, tax map R5, lot 132 in the R2 zone. Is the applicant here, or representative? Come on up. While you're doing that, I think I'll have Ms. Hardy just give the board a quick update on the history of this parcel, if you would, Diane? I think
Yeah.
it's important.
Hang on 1 minute. Okay, I have put together sort of some background information for the board. This is rather complicated because it's a plan that's been revised 4 times in the last 25 years. And I just wanted to give you some context of where we are with it and why the applicant is here today. To give you some background, this lot is part of the original Durrell Woods subdivision, which was approved by the town back in 1987, I believe it was. And this was a project involving 192 units. There was a single-family component, as well as, I thought I had a map I was gonna share with you.
You do.
It's in your package,
Send
Diane.
your package.
Yeah, there's another map, though, that I wanted to share with you, showing what the latest, well, we can talk about it. Yeah, so the original Durrell Woods included 64 single-family units, which are on Durrell Drive, I believe it's called.
Hawkins.
Can you help me with that?
And Hawkins, yeah.
Okay, and Hawkins. And then it also included some condominium units. The total was for 192 units. Durrell Woods was one of the developments that was approved in the 80s under the alternative design subdivision, which were part of the zoning and subdivision regulations in effect at the time. And at this point, 64 homes have been, single-family homes have been built in 61 condominiums. So it's not at 100% build-out, obviously. The condominiums include Kimball Way and Hillside Condominiums, and most recently, the 10 duplex units that were built off of Hersey Lane. Under the original approval, there was some open space, and you can see that on the attached map that I've given you, showing sort of the green area that sort of surrounds the development. And also, let's see, I'm sorry. Okay, there was also, currently there's 2 undeveloped tracts, tax map 131 and 134, and the application before you concerns what was previously known as Lot 68 of the development, and currently shown on the tax map is Lot 132. And this is a proposal for 28 single-family units. And to give you a little bit more background, the whole Durrell Woods project was vested by the planning board in 1990. And what that vesting recognizes the extent of infrastructure that was built to support the development, including the roads, water, sewer, drainage systems. And the original plan for Lot 68 was for 13 4-unit dwellings and 1 2-unit building for a total of 54 units. In 2012, Walter Cheney Jr., who was here this evening, came before the planning board and asked to modify the original subdivision and site plan approval to allow for reconfiguration of Lot 132. And he proposed a project involving 26 duplex units. And it was presented to the planning board in 3 phases. And the planning board approved that modified plan with a number of conditions. And I provided you all with a copy of the planning board's notice of decision so that you could see what those conditions were and what the findings of fact were. Recently, the first phase of that development, Hersey Green, came in for building permits, and that involved the construction of 10 units or 5 duplexes. And all of those duplex units have been completed at this time. I think we've issued certificate of occupancy for all of them. That particular phase was undertaken by Leo Manso and other gentleman, and Dave Lemieux. Now, the remainder of the land is available for development, and it's my understanding there's an agreement with Chinburg Builders to pursue that development, which they're proposing 28 single-family lots, which would make the total number of units on that lot 38 units as opposed to the 52 that were approved in 2012.
Okay, significant
Okay.
reduction in number of units.
Significant reduction, certainly significant impacts as well. So I guess I would just, for this evening, I'd like to hear the presentation and maybe some confirmation of some of the facts that I just presented from the applicants, and that with this input from the board, that perhaps they'd be able to submit an application for further modification at a future planning board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, please, would you introduce yourself, and you want to walk us through what the proposal is in front of us? What you're thinking of doing anyways?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Pohl from Beals Associates in Stratham. Thank you very much for the update. That was actually very informative and quite accurate. If anybody has any historical questions of the proceedings of the prior approval, as Diane said, Wally is here to address them, as he is very informative in the past approval. As you see here on the board, just real quickly, is the very overall project of Doral Woods. The lines here in hatching is the open space. The subject parcel we are speaking of this evening is actually located right down here along Hersey Lane, and then Hillside comes up this way. So the plan in front of you here is what was the second approval for the piece that we are speaking of this evening. As previously stated, as you come up Hillside here, there are 5 duplexes. Those are actually in existing condition. The remainder of the property here is what we are speaking of this evening. Previously, there was a proposal for all duplex units, 21 buildings being 42 units. Our proposal, now that Chinburg Builders is looking at the property and would like to go forward, they would like to do single-family homes as stated. We have looked at that in the vicinity of the road network that was already kind of looked at. It made sense. The road network, in a sense, is relatively close to the same as what was there. We have slightly modified it to the plan that was submitted. In the lighter brown here are existing duplex units. The proposal would be to use almost exactly the same road that was on the northern side of the property. We would propose single-family units here. And then down here, there was a short stub, which I believe we've actually improved upon. Previously, as you can see, there was more or less a dead-end road with the lack of a turnaround. We have actually applied a cul-de-sac, so we have a nice, safe turnaround in that location. The lot here is 8.9 acres. The road length is slightly more than what was previously proposed, being because of the cul-de-sac length, roughly 1,240 feet. As you can see, it's a relatively straightforward plan. The intent was just to come before the board, explain where we are at this time, and get their feedback. I would like to say that this is more or less, we interpret it as a site plan amendment. I think Diane said that they were being cut into lots where we're actually going to do limited common areas. We're not looking to subdivide these, as it's going to remain part of the larger development.
So it will remain a condominium,
Yes, that's correct.
and they'll remain private roads.
Correct. Yep. Other than that, as I said, I think it's very straightforward. Before we went much further, we just wanted to introduce it to the board and get your input. Again, my name is Scott Cole, and I'll try to answer any questions you may have.
Sure, thank you. So the roadways are basically the same. So I assume the grading is very similar to what was approved whenever. Therefore, the stormwater management is gonna be very similar.
I would suspect, yeah, it has not been finalized at
Sure,
this time.
yeah, okay. I mean, if that's the case, I have no issues with it whatsoever. Any other board members have any comments?
No, our last issue, the last time we were here, it was really about drainage and making sure they could get all, I think we felt that it was the AOT permits that would deal with the drainage as opposed to us not having the authority to impose the current drainage standards under the
Yep.
stormwater regs.
And it's my understanding they did get an approval from alteration of terrain for the entire concept plan as well as for the first phase. And we have a copy of that on file
For the duplex plan,
for the duplexes.
you'll have to go back and you'll have to update that, correct?
That's correct. We'll
Right.
have to get an amended state permit, yes.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? That's what we're here for feedback. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Anybody out in the audience have any comments? Come on up, sir, please. Please identify yourself and you're welcome.
Well, hi, my name is Steve Jerome, and I live at 12 Hillside Lane. So I live right about there. And 28 single-family homes sounds fine to me. I've lived there since 2006. My wife and I were original buyers from Skip Manso and on Hillside Lane, and we've always had some sense that at some point somebody was going to develop and build a whole bunch of stuff back, in the woods there. We've always known that. And as Diane Hardy went through the history, right, there were proposals to build a lot more, and now it's, somewhat less, 28 single-family homes. Sounds fine to me. Let's face it, we have a very desirable town. We have low mortgage rates. We have a good economy. People want to build stuff. So somebody's going to, a local builder, a quality guy is going to build something. That's good. I think that, 28 single-family homes would be very compatible with the townhouses and the other single-family homes that we have up the top of the hill. Only question I have, because I was trying to follow all these approvals and stuff, is that the last of Durrell Woods, or is there more Durrell Woods that could be built?
Two more
There are
lots.
two other lots. One of them is currently being used, part of it anyway, for the town's water treatment blending system that's associated with the McIntosh well.
Okay,
And I believe there's an easement, that they provided to the town to allow the town to, continue having that on that property.
that's that little
So-
building that was built 5 or 6 years ago on the
Yep,
curve?
correct.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
So there's what, did you say 2 other lots?
Well,
that's
that's
one
one
of
of
That's
them.
one of them.
And then the other, and I have another map here. Does anyone,
Yeah, it's on the other side of the road, across
Okay.
from that.
we have another map
Oh.
that shows the two lots.
Here it is.
Fortunately, I didn't take it.
So here's the blending well lot,
Okay,
and this is Hershey, coming into Durrell, this other lot. So it's adjacent to it, but away from the condos.
so those are,
You're all open space here.
thank you.
Thank you
You're
very
welcome,
much.
thank you.
Anybody else have any comments?
I just had a question about the last approved version
Yep.
versus, were those gonna be, it says they were duplexes, right? 26 duplexes?
Yep.
Were those gonna be condos or?
They are.
Yes,
Okay.
and
They
these are
are
condos.
condos.
And these are condos as well? Okay, so we're not going from rental to condo, okay.
They could be rentals.
Right,
Well,
we're not,
Condominiums
yes.
is
we're
a
not
separate-
going to
They could-
multifamily.
Right, it was
Yeah.
rented,
Right,
yeah,
yes.
so, but it's more like it's gonna be a home instead of a duplex.
Single-family house.
Yeah,
Single
single
house.
family home.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anybody else? With that, I guess I'll say you're on the right track.
Scott Hogan. Now, as this project is a little bit different in the fact that it's such a large project and has been going for quite some time, we want to make sure that we're on the right track and we provide what will be required to the board in the future. And I can certainly go over this with Diane at a later date, but we want to ensure what our next full step would be for this kind of proceeding. It'd be a full site plan amendment application.
And what I'm recommending to the board to consider is handling this modification just like we did the modification in 2012.
Yeah.
Where we did have a public hearing, we notified all the abutters, and there were some conditions placed on it, and I think I attached a copy of those, that notice of decision
Yep, you did.
Yes.
to the handout that I forwarded to you this afternoon or yesterday via email. So that gives you an idea of the types of things that the board might consider.
Okay.
But I think, it's only fair to the public that, we have public notice of this, and so that when the bulldozers start moving in, we don't get a flurry of phone calls from people saying, hey, what's going on there?
Certainly.
So, this is a way of keeping the public engaged and giving them information
Okay.
to help the process move along.
Great.
Yeah, my sense is if you look at the previous decision with those requirements, I think if you follow those, I think we'll pretty much be on the same page.
Yeah. Great.
Which did not require a full site plan.
It did not require the redesign of the site plan and the full package that today you would have to do.
That's what makes it different.
Right.
For me, so.
Yes.
So it's an abbreviated process.
Great, that's perfect.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck. Alrighty, next on the agenda is Eric DeWitt, request for a waiver of impact fees for residential units in the mixed-use building at 81 Exeter Road, tax map U3, lot 137 in the B1 zone. The proposal was to remove the existing buildings and driveways and build a 2,920 square foot, two-story mixed-use commercial/residential building with municipal water and sewer. The site plan included associated parking, drainage, and landscaping improvements. Good evening, Eric. Good to see you again.
Hello, my name's Eric DeWitt, property owner at 81 Exeter Road. So I'm here to request, I would say more of an adjustment to the impact fees being assessed on the 6 units in my project at 81 Exeter Road. And the request is to adjust them according to the Pcm Planning LLC letter dated June 7th, 2019. Which talks a lot about the difference between a studio apartment impact fees versus other types of residential units.
And the planning board does have a copy of that, and was given out to you at the June meeting.
Is this a rehearing of the prior request?
If you
The
recall,
board
when
voted
it
on?
came before.
We
the
waived
planning-
like 2 units.
Right,
Right.
we waived for
3 units.
3
Yeah.
units.
Okay.
But there was
Right.
also some discussion that, perhaps if he had more information from a real estate marketing, that it might be viewed in a different light. And I believe the planning board did encourage Mr. DeWitt to, if he did have that information, to come back and the board would revisit the question. So that's why he's
Correct.
here today. And that was reflected in the minutes of that meeting. Al Sheldon stated this vote was made without prejudice if the applicant wants to come back to the board.
Because I think it was my position, we didn't have the authority to grant that under our current regulations.
Well, he now has new information that he wants to have the board consider.
Yeah, and I can go through impact fee by impact fee as reflected in this report. So the first one is the school impact fee. If you look at page 3, first paragraph, second part of the paragraph, it states that studio units, which are unlikely to generate any appreciable enrollment impact. So if you read further, it really states that they don't think that this is actually something that would drive enrollment. So, it's just not a suitable type of residential unit for a school-age child. So on that one, I'm requesting, as sort of recommended in this report, a full waiver of the impact fee.
For schools.
For schools. On the recreational impact fee, it talks a lot about the size and the square footage and so forth, and makes a recommendation at the end to reduce the fee. And I think the number on that is $140 per unit, as opposed to the $279 per unit. And then on the wastewater and water supply fee, it does talk a lot about studios having less impact because there are less people living there. And they actually recommend a new impact fee of $593 for the wastewater and $356 for the water supply.
What was the first number? Excuse me.
For which one?
You said it was $356 for water
I
and,
have a summary here.
sorry about that.
So water supply, $356 per unit, and sewage, $593 per unit.
Thank you.
Where is the, do you have a copy of the memo you're referring to?
I have it back in my office, so,
Or does the applicant have a copy of it?
did you bring copies of it,
Oh,
Eric?
I didn't, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
You'd like me to make copies?
Yes, please.
I'd be happy to do that.
You want to go down and take a break, Eric, you can, might be a few minutes.
Oh, sure. I can give you a general update of the project.
Sure.
Great.
So I'm still working to satisfy all the conditions for the final approval. A couple of weeks ago, I attempted to get the permit for the excavation of the sewage line, and I had my excavator meet with the water and sewer. Unfortunately, the sewage connection as designed won't work, and that is due to the horizontal boring pitch needed to reach the line, as well as the DES regulation on the pitch of the gravity feed from the manhole to the sewage line, and the fact that there is a water main in the way. So my engineer proposed a solution, but it didn't satisfy the town's engineer. So there's still some back and forth going on there.
That's not a very good start, huh? Problem right off the bat. You never know though till you try to make a
Yeah.
connection what is actually there.
So what do you anticipate the best resolution to that will be?
Well, so we suggested connecting the force main directly to the sewage line in the street, but the result of that would have been pipe hammering and a pressure issue, which could have been resolved with a vent, but it's not really a good thing on a business site to be venting.
Right.
Smells. So to solve that issue, we proposed lowering the force main so that it could enter the line in the street at an upward pitch, and that would have solved the pressure issue. However, the town's engineer wanted to have a manhole for serviceability in case there was a problem. So they suggested tying into an existing manhole, of which there are two near the property. Unfortunately, they're pretty far away, and we're pretty sure there's a drainage pipe in the way of one. So it's very cost prohibitive and impractical. So we're looking at relocating the sewage, the manhole further up the property to be able to achieve the pitch and miss the water line.
Relocating it or just adding another one?
Adding a manhole.
Adding a
The town's engineer wants a gravity feed into the main because of the pressure and
Right.
accessibility issue. So we're trying to figure that out in accordance with the DES regulations that have certain distances and heights above water that have to be dealt with.
Are there any outstanding DOT issues?
Nope, they've issued the permit to change the entry, and that's all set. It's more of the excavation thing, getting to the sewage line. They want some horizontal boring to reach it. The water line is okay, but again, it's in the way, so gotta figure that out.
And is your plan to move forward with the development of the building, or do you need to wait for a tenant? Anchor
Well,
tenant.
yeah, I am planning on moving forward. There is a little bit of funding gap that I need to resolve. A lot of that is with the green aspects of the project, which I really don't want to get rid of. In terms of the permeable parking, which I know there's been a lot of discussion about, the cisterns, the EV charging station, the metal roof, which is really what you want for a cistern, but the metal roof is 3 times as expensive as asphalt. So I'm trying not to compromise those aspects of the project and trying to do value engineering in other areas.
Great, well, good luck with that.
Well, how about this? I suggest we take a 5-minute recess. Everybody okay with that?
Sure.
All right.
Unless you wanna do reports.
Well, I think
Yeah.
Diane should be here to. I don't think those are gonna
Okay.
take very long. Right, 5-minute recess.
Did anyone bring their regulations with them, the zoning regs, just right there?
All right, welcome back. While we're waiting for Diane, I do think it's a good idea to follow up on what Val had said, to go through committee reports.
So, it's been short agendas at the town council lately, but one major thing that's, I'm not sure if it impacts the planning board directly, but there's gonna be some charter amendments. And I'm thinking specifically the changes for when elected and appointed, those elected or appointed take office. And I don't know, does that affect the planning board?
Well, we're elected, so
Yeah.
it could.
Yeah, so it's gonna, it just gives, those, especially new members, more time between the time of the town meeting and when they actually take the oath and start their new role. It'll be in April instead of right after the, town meeting. So, gives people time to, get acquainted with what their role will be. A little more time to ramp up, rather than jumping right in.
Is that something the council came up with themselves, or was it a suggestion from somebody?
It was a suggestion. The town administrator went through and did a lot of, review. I don't know if he did that with the staff as well, but, he basically presented a lot of recommendations. There was a subcommittee that went over those, to make sure they all sounded in line. And some of them were also, I think, to align some of the wording with, state law as well, so. Those will be, each amendment has to be voted on separately. I forget the number of them, I think it's like 7 or 8, something like that, that's gonna go on at the town meeting, to be voted on by the town,
Sure.
so.
Okay.
They're all on the website or the weekly meeting, the weekly update?
Yeah,
I think?
they're all out there. If anyone's got any questions about what they are, I'd suggest calling check the website or check the meeting minutes from the last council meeting, because that's when they were approved.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, I think we just still have a joint meeting pending.
Yes, I will talk with Diane after,
Okay.
try to get something going on.
What's the status with the economic development consultant reports?
Because the administrator said that he thought we could have a joint meeting in October, I think that's getting wrapped up, because that was the contingency, right?
Right.
So maybe we have a green light to start setting a date pretty soon. I don't think we're gonna make it in October, but
No, you're right. No. If we don't stop planning it, it just won't happen, though. Anybody else?
I guess for Conservation Commission, a couple members, put together like a photo exhibit. People around the town took photos of Newmarket, and then they're planning on having like a showcase of the photos at the Stone Church in November. So I think that's, November 3rd, which is a Sunday, so between 4 and 6 p.m. So if anyone's interested in that, it sounds like they'll have music and refreshments.
Anybody else have anything to offer? I have nothing. Want me to go?
What's your BCM report?
This is
Oh, the old one.
The old
Are we still, we're not under adjournment anymore, right?
recess, yeah.
We're not, correct? Yeah, let me just read the zoning ordinance. Oh, Eric should be here. This was the issue I brought up at the last meeting. So, under our ordinance, if we don't have the right to waive anything in the ordinance unless the ordinance gives us a waiver ability. So we have the right to waive impact fees only under, there's 6 conditions. The 5th condition is the one that applies, which is a fee payer may request a full or partial waiver of the amount of the impact fee for a particular development based on the results of an independent study of the demand on public capital facility capacity and related costs attributable to that development. In support of such request, the fee payer shall prepare and submit to the planning board an independent fee calculation or other relevant study and supporting documentation of the public capital facility impact of the proposed development. The independent calculation or study shall set forth the specific reasons for departing from the methodologies and schedules adopted by the town. The planning board shall review such study and render its decision. All costs incurred by the town for review of such study include consultant and counsel fees shall be paid by the fee payer.
But we.
That's why in that last, even though, you know, you know, it was my position on the last vote, was because we had no authority under the ordinance to just grant waivers.
Right.
There's
And
only
you brought
6
that up before.
right, and there's only 6 conditions that we're allowed to grant a waiver.
Yeah.
And this is the only one that really applies, you know, in this particular scenario.
And it sounds like that information has been provided,
If they,
but
well,
not by the applicant.
Well, he had the report,
the
but he
applicant is
didn't submit
using
it.
the report that,
we did, that the town.
the town did for the council,
Correct,
but not for that development.
correct.
I mean, and it's the applicant should be, Diane shouldn't be out trying to get, you know, the report. The applicant should be giving us as the premise for why we should be waiving, or we're doing partial waivers.
Right, and you did a partial waiver the last time, right?
That's
I-
what the,
that was the
that's
meeting I
what
was
the
not
board
at.
did.
The board did, that's what I
Yeah.
mean you, and when I say you, the board.
Yeah.
Right.
I
I don't know why we didn't have that information in our package,
But
but,
it was our request here. It's the applicant, it's incumbent upon the applicant to provide the board with the package. Not to be referring to some other report
right.
given to the town.
I don't wanna sit here all night waiting for him to go. Try to get Ms. Harvey back.
Yeah, and have the applicant provide
continue.
an actual,
Yes.
you know, written request with his reasons.
Recess for 5 minutes while I run out and try to get her back. Thank you. Okay, so we're back again from commercial break. So, Ms. Hardy was not able to pull up that document. So, while we were waiting, Val pulled up the ordinance on her phone. So I think it's prudent to read that ordinance so everybody understands, you especially, that, what ability we have to waive. Okay, so you wanna read that, Val?
Yeah, because the planning board can waive site plan review regulations, subdivision regulations. We can't waive anything in an ordinance unless the ordinance specifically gives us the legal authority to waive that.
Okay.
And under section F of the ordinance, I'm sorry, it's not my phone, but. Did it just come back? It's under F number 5. And that's getting, I lost it. But if you could look at that particular section of the ordinance, that is the only, under number 5, F5, that is the one relative to you as the applicant providing to the board this written documentation relative to your development and why you feel that you have particular attributes of that development based upon that third-party review to waive or grant partial. So you really need to stay specific to F5
So
and provide that to this board.
So in order for the board to adopt the recommendations in that letter, it would have to be changed by the town council, or?
Well, that would be a change in the whole ordinance.
Right.
What I'm saying is you as an applicant have the ability and right to appear before this board, but we only have the right to act in your particular instance. For what you're looking for is what is allowed under the waivers under section F5.
Not the letter.
Oh, that's good, Diane.
Sure,
It's
sure.
under
No, no,
5.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And it really is up to you to put
Sure.
together the
Yeah.
argument in your case to convince the board that you are entitled to this. And if you want to draw on the draft report from our expert, you're welcome to do that.
Okay.
It's up to the
Sure.
planning board whether they
Yeah.
want to
So,
accept that or not.
yeah, so why don't you provide us that information for the next meeting?
Sure.
And we'll have it on the agenda, and I apologize, we didn't find it tonight, but
Sure.
it's not the right not the right approach anyways in hindsight, but, we'll
Sure.
gladly hear it at the next meeting, provide us the
Yeah.
information.
Okay,
But-
and I would like to point out one more thing, if I
Sure.
may,
Just
before.
Go ahead,
before
let
we
Val say
leave
something.
that, that should be provided to this board 21 days before this hearing. Okay, no different than other applications, so that Diane has the opportunity to also provide any recommendations to the board. and we have the ability to review that request and the supporting information before this hearing.
Gotcha.
Okay, and you wanted to bring something else up?
Yeah, just when this information is provided and start looking into it, there's also some ambiguity on the non-residential impact fees. So it states that they are $6.70 per gallons per day expected water usage, and then it states factors provided in methodology to allow estimates of fee per square foot or by other measures by type of use. And on the notes section, it says fees for business and industry will vary by type of business and or size of structure and estimated demand on utility systems. So I don't see in there anywhere that there's actually a breakdown of type of business in terms of per gallons a day provided. So, I mean, if there could be some consideration in clarifying that note and giving categories of how much gallons per day should be charged.
Well,
For example.
Every
category
business
is
will be different.
Every business is different.
Right, but I don't think there's anywhere that it's actually spelled out. Is that correct? Or-
Correct.
Yeah, but again, the onus is on you
Right.
to get the information, have an engineer help you establish it, and present the information to the board. But if the burden of proof is on you and not the board to make.
Oh, no,
these decisions.
I
But-
understand that
but the-
completely. I just wanted to point that out,
Yes.
that it does state it here, but it doesn't go further in giving a chart of which usage would be what. But if you're saying that should be
An
the cost.
engineer knows how to calculate it, and they have to do it and that's what we use, and it usually is approved by the town's consulting engineer. But you
Right.
have to know how to calculate projected wastewater and water flows to be able to do that. So you might
Right.
have to hire an engineer to assist you with that.
Right, I was talking not the gallons per
Right.
day. I was talking about the price charged per gallon per day, which would be up to the board to.
No,
It's what-
I think the price per
what
day
is-
per gallon is that number.
It is that is
Okay.
the number, and that is what
Right.
is cited in the
But the
town's
usage
impact
is-
fee ordinance on how to calculate them. And you're the first person in 13 years that has raised that. We've been charging it based on the engineering estimates that we've received.
Mhm.
Different uses will have different gallons per day.
Different volumes. The price is the same,
Right.
but the volumes can be different. So I would suggest you go to
Right, no, and I've
wastewater
done
engineer or
that.
something and say,
Yeah.
what is my expected flow?
Right.
That would be
Okay.
the approach, okay?
And have that probably stamped by an engineer. That
Or
it's
on a letterhead
legitimate
from an
engineer,
an engineering evaluation. But we can't vary the rates
Correct.
based on the use.
Correct.
It's the same standard
Okay, that's what I
rate
was
for
just asking
everybody.
clarification on.
Yep, okay. Alrighty, so we'll see you at the next meeting.
Which is
We need
November, we need a
November
motion.
15th.
I'll make a motion to continue the request for a waiver of impacts fees for residential units in the mixed-use building located at tax map U3, lot 137, the B1 zone, by Mr. Eric DeWitt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Can I also make a comment to Mr. DeWitt
Yes.
while he's here? The time is running short again on your extension. The board granted you an wastewater treatment plans. You've been talking about revisions to the design. You gotta get some revised plans into us if you're gonna make some further changes. Because December, whatever the date was, 10th, the conditional approval will run out.
Right, and I
And
think I
time is
gave
marching on.
an updated your
Yeah.
absence, which.
And we've been waiting all summer for you to get back to us on the developers agreement, and you haven't. So a lot of time has gone by, and, we need to, have some closure on this project.
Nobody's
Can't go
more
on forever.
aware of the time passing than me. So,
Okay, we'll see you at the
and
next
I-
meeting.
And I do wanna wrap this up and get going, and
Yeah.
I've put a lot of my personal time into making this
Sure.
happen, so it is a lot.
Absolutely.
to-
Yep. Understood. We'll see you at the next meeting. We're gonna move on. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yep. All right, let's get into impact fee discussion.
Yeah.
As we go. So, I know Diane has provided us with a lot of information. I have gone through it all. I hope everybody's had a chance to go through it. So I'll just start by what my take on it is, there's a philosophical discussion about whether we should have impact fees or not. I happen to fall on the side of, I think impact fees are just a tax that I don't think we should be imposing. I'll leave that at that. On a more practical basis, impact fees are assessed for the costs, future costs of development, well, the impacts they'll have on infrastructure, right? So we basically have 4 categories of impact fees. School, we're building a new school. I can't see any time in any of our lifetime where we'll ever be putting any more additions on the schools as school enrollment is not increasing. So going forward, I don't see a reason to have a school impact fee. Water and sewer, I think, should have, if they wanna have there, they can have system development fees or betterment fees or whatever, which could be managed by the DPW, on the town side. And then we have recreation, and I just don't think we really need to have an impact fee for recreation. Again, there aren't more kids in the schools. I know there's constraints on fields. I think having the new elementary gym is helping alleviate the backlog in the gyms. So what I'm saying is I think I would support recommending that we do away with impact fees. So I'll throw that out there for discussion and get everybody else's opinion on it.
My position is I would concur with that opinion for those reasons. I also think on the recreational side, we have a lot of programs that are being offered through their rec department, which is a phenomenal department, and it seems that their mandate is more of a fee-based system. And then we just have a lot of volunteering going on in this town that's creating other recreational opportunities for people in town that's not being funded by the taxpayers, but yet being able to be taken advantage of by all the residents here, like the Shopmeyer Park, and in conjunction with the rec department.
And I guess I'll ask Gretchen, maybe if you know, or maybe even Diane, at one point when I was on the council, there was a lot of discussion about trying to ensure that the rec department was self-sufficient, that they were charging enough fees for their programs. And a lot of it revolved around the summer camp, because a lot of out-of-town kids are in the summer camp. Do you know if that is the case at the rec department?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Fees pay for their programs and their staff and everything?
They're self-funded.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Although they do have a capital reserve fund, and they have come forward this year with some requests to replenish their capital reserve funds for things such as passenger van that they have, which is at its end of its useful life, so to speak, and so there are other sources of revenue available to them. They've also availed themselves of a lot of federal grants.
A lot of grants.
Right, and got some
Yeah,
money to
absolutely.
turn
Right.
around for the Land and Water Conservation Fund.
And believe me, they do a great job. They do a great
Yeah.
job, but I think they're self-sufficient for the most part.
Well,
And buying a new van to replace an old van is not something that should be paid for with impact fees anyways.
Right, it's not like you're providing a
legal.
new, it's a new capital improvement that was created because of development, the need.
If they had to buy a 30-seat van instead of a 15-seat van because of rampant development, that would be something that would be considered to be being able to be paid for with impact fees, but, maintenance and just changing things out is not, so. And believe me, we don't have to make a decision tonight, I'm just throwing it out there, so I just wanna get everybody's opinion on what the thoughts are, cause I would like to, either go to the council and say we support impact fees or we don't, but I think we need to make a decision and go.
So, I agree with all your reasoning. The only thing I would say I maybe disagree with is that it's a tax. I do see it as an offset. That's why the word impact fee is used, so. I think as far as the water and sewer goes, though, would we be recommending, if we want to go forward, a way that, because I think there still can be an impact, obviously. You made some suggestions on how that could be
Yeah.
moved over into
Right.
another.
And most municipalities will take it up that way, and that was the planning board's recommendation to the council the last time we
Last
revisited
time.
this.
And it was the recommendation of Bruce
Right.
Mabry. And I mentioned it to Sean Gregg, and, you know, it's something that they have in the back of their mind, but they haven't implemented it, but perhaps now
Well,
is
it's
the
also
time for
fluid.
departure.
But it's also fluid too, depending on what the particular cost may be of that development to bring water and sewer out to it, or.
So, kind of looking forward, I'd say we wouldn't have situations like tonight's
Correct.
applicant having to come up with the burden of meeting that one bullet in the ordinance, right? Or maybe having no items. in the
You would have a
ordinance,
variety
no
of planning
avenue.
boards having different interpretations of the ordinance, or voting outside of the authority of the ordinance, because it wouldn't exist.
Right, and there was a lot, and I have to say I've been guilty of, there's been
Me too.
a lot of waivers we've granted that in hindsight we should not have granted. We didn't have the
Right.
authority to grant.
I remember when that was reconsidered, it was brought up to
Yeah.
be mindful of that.
And I mean, I think Newmarket is in a position now where we don't really need it. If water and sewer does their own development fee to take care of their needs, I certainly don't think we need it for the school.
And then you're also
Or
not
rec
having to
department.
go out when you establish these new impact fees, the actual fees. You know, they can deal with their own infrastructure needs or capital improvement needs, project by project basis. Or year by year, not every 10 years, and not having to, under the statute, in order to be able to adopt these, you've got to go out and do all of these, the research, the reports, the data analytics of it, which is costly.
Anybody have any thoughts?
I think I'm in agreement with you, and especially like you look at the development within Newmarket, it's smaller family homes, it's townhouses, and a lot of these people don't have children either. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting things in one of these reports I read, you know, which is, you know, it was titled "Where Have All the Children Gone?" is that, you know, the state of New Hampshire has lost a lot of school-age kids in the last 20 years. Nothing has increased. I remember when, you know, 10 years ago or 12 years ago, we started talking about a new school, and was going to be at the golf course, and it was projected to be so much bigger because at the time they were, you know, projected an increase, and you know, we have not seen any increase. We've seen a decrease in the school system. I bet in the last 20 years we've lost 100 kids, 200 kids in the high school. You know, we went from Class M to Class S because we're just small.
There's a lot more people. It's my impression that a lot of the people that have come in are also making the choice to go private or go somewhere else. Like they're actually not staying in town for the school.
That's always happened. There's always been a significant amount of kids going to St. Thomas or Berwick or whatever.
But the fact is, and I think that was the report that Diane, you know, gave us, is we're just particularly in this state or this area of the nation, it's not an area where millennials or ex-gens are having a lot of kids. It's just that's what's very different.
And the baby boomers and our kids are all through the system now.
I think it is expected that the population will eventually decline in the whole state in the next 20 years.
Definitely.
So it's I think New Hampshire is one of the third oldest state in the whole country.
Right.
I don't know if the population is going to decline, but certainly it's an aging population.
In certain areas, I think the north of the country will northern
Severely has declined.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
think,
that's
quite
true.
honestly, if we didn't have so many people move here from Massachusetts, the population of New Hampshire would have declined. You know, I think any increase we've had in the last 20 years has been people moved from Massachusetts to get away from their taxes or their high real estate costs or whatever, or job.
Well,
and
it's
traffic.
it's estate planning. There's no estate tax in New Hampshire, where there is in Massachusetts,
And there's an income
Connecticut,
tax
New
in
Jersey, New York.
Massachusetts, too.
Right.
All right, so, is consensus that we'll go to the board and say, the council, I'm sorry, would we support doing away with the impact fees and doing a project, what do you call that again, for the water sewer?
They're called
Development-
system
system
development
development
fees.
fee.
And that doesn't require the planning
Right.
board's involvement.
No,
It's
right.
something that is adopted by the town council by ordinance.
Right.
Or the water users,
Right.
sewer users.
So I'm thinking the council might want to hear from sewer and water, just to hear, like, do you have a plan to, can you pick that up and take that forward yet? What would be the timing?
We do have the 2001 report. That's the one I was able to pull up, which did recommend
Yeah, but
that.
just,
Yeah.
So it's
yeah,
just
right.
reconsidering that.
I just meant making it effective, like, are they ready, or what would be the timing
Yeah.
to switch over to do that?
My thoughts are that where I do work, and they call them betterment fees in Massachusetts, it would be, they probably have, Underwood has probably done a report, study for what the cost should be and all that. They may have something, or if not, they would hire something like Underwood to develop that for them, what the cost should be and all that, so I think it's pretty standard.
I don't think they've set up the system, but they have had consultants work on their connection fees and that sort of.
Well,
Correct.
the Mooney Point water line's a perfect example of that. That's gonna be a betterment fee. I mean, and that's how it was presented to the voters, and that's where that is going. I mean, that's just a perfect example.
Yeah, my only point was just to make sure that they're ready.
Right.
Sure.
Just get that input.
Yeah.
Yep, agreed.
Yep.
Everybody good with that? Yeah. Ted?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, but what I've heard, yeah, I agree.
I mean, quite honestly, the council may not agree with us, but all we can do is make a recommendation and we'll
No
deal with it
different
one
than
way or the
last
other.
time.
Right, we'll deal with it one way or the other. I hope I wasn't on the council that ignored that recommendation.
Yeah, I don't think you are.
No, I don't
Um,
think so. That was,
Okay, great, thank you for your input on that. So, Diane, while you were away, we did the committee reports. My
Oh,
report
great.
had nothing, so do you have anything to report?
just that the CIP committee finished the recommendation to the town council and the budget committee on CIP projects, and we have forwarded it to the town administrator, and will be considered by him and presented to the town council as part of that budget. And there is gonna be a budget workshop, I guess, the last Saturday in October, and the CIP committee will be making a recommendation at that point.
Excellent.
And
Thank
we'll
you.
be getting booklets out to everybody like we did last year.
That's great.
Yes, thank you for your work
Lot of
on that.
work.
I appreciate your hard work on that.
Certainly, thank you.
Anybody have anything else?
I just have a question about the books. Susan said that she could get us electronic copies instead of hard copies. Are we trying to?
I think what she was saying is that all of the RSAs are online. So if you
do
have-
want a
RSA
hard
books.
copy? Yeah.
Yeah, if you wanna look up something, sometimes you just don't know what you need to look up.
Well, I saw you had to do that tonight.
Right.
It's really easy.
And then I couldn't bring it back.
Yeah, so maybe it's better to have a.
So I changed my mind. I would like to be on that subcommittee for the water resources chapter.
Okay,
If you
the,
can add me.
the water resource chapter.
Excellent.
Okay. Yeah, great,
Thank you.
excellent.
Yeah.
Thank
You
you,
have
Mikal.
3 now, or
So we have
we have
three.
more?
We have Val, we have Mikal, and
Okay.
Gretchen, so we have 3.
All right, and then you'll just follow up on the other committee members, because we'll have a public, if Bill joined again, other
Right.
We can
at-large people.
talk 'em into it, yeah.
Well, this brings a lot to the table.
Excellent. All right, great. We got through a lot of stuff tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Guys have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate everybody's
Thank
hard
you.
work.